Hey guys, Caleb here. Welcome to the long and the short of it. If you want to get the most out of this video, there are a couple things that you can do. One, you can read the chapter that we're talking about or listen to it. I have found this thing on Spotify called Streetlights, and it's basically just like, it's kind of the chapter of the Bible, but it's a song. So if you want to go check that out, we're going to be in Matthew 21 today. That'll be the story that we're looking at. Second thing you can do is if you want to share this video with somebody and then talk with them about it and what you learned, that's a great place to just figure out different things that you haven't seen in the Bible before. And then the third thing that you can do is if you have a question about what I talk about or what anyone has talked about in these series of videos, just leave a comment down below and we would love to talk to you there. So this is kind of the story how I would see it that we're going to talk about today. So there's this guy who owns a brewery. He makes all the beer there. He also owns the field that make all the hops and different things like that, and he does everything through this brew house. And eventually he decides that he wants to move back to Germany because that's what people who brew beer do. They just move back to Germany. And so he leases his brew house to these tenants. Now, after a couple years of him living off in Germany, one of the beers that he created and that he made actually starts to do very well. And it becomes like beer of the year and all these different things like that. And so he wants to collect on the money that he's made, that, the tenants have been working, but he, owns the brew house, so he gets a portion of that price. And so he's been emailing them and stuff. They don't email him back. And so eventually he decides, okay, I'm just going to send a couple people over there. Well, to his surprise, the, business associates he sends over there, they get really beat up. Like, the tenants physically beat them. They like throw rocks at them. They beat them. One of them even gets run over by like a car in the parking lot. And so he doesn't really know what to do. He's kind of at his wit's end. And so he's like, you know what? I'm kind of too old to travel. Like, it's not safe for me to get on a plane right now anyway because of COVID. So I'm going to send my son to go collect on what is rightfully mine. And so he does that. And when the son shows up, the people who own or who are renting this brew house, they look at him and they go, hey, here comes the son. This is our chance. Let's get rid of this once and for all. This guy's supposed to inherit all this after the boss dies. Let's just kill the son. And then we'll get to inherit it all. We'll get all the money and we can just keep making beer of the year again and again and again and we'll be rich. And so that's what they do. They kill the son. And so that's where kind of Jesus ends his story. There are a couple things that are different, like it's a vineyard, not a beer garden, but, tomato, tomato. And so when Jesus ends his story, he asks the people he's talking to, he says, what do you think the guy who leased them this brew house is going to do? And they're like, my Bible says the religious leaders, so these are religious people that Jesus is talking about. They're like, oh, well, of course, he's going to get rid of the wicked, horrible men who beat up his business associates, didn't email him back, and eventually killed his son. And he's going to lease his brew house to someone who's actually going to share in what he's created with them. He's going to give it to someone who's actually going to share in the work that the master's doing. And so Jesus kind of goes on to say, yeah, and that's what's happening right now with me in Jerusalem. When you go back and listen to Matthew 21, one of the things that you're going to find is that through this whole time, it's basically Jesus and religious people going back and forth, and Jesus is saying, hey, God's kingdom is supposed to be with people who are bearing fruit. And because this Jewish religious system you guys have set up isn't bearing fruit, God is going to take that and he's actually going to put it into something called the church. And that's what we see kind of happen in the rest of the Bible. That's why we're here, right? That's why Flatirons Community Church exists, because we're supposed to be taking the work that God's done and turning it into something good. So I think this story is really convicting for me personally now, because I look at it and I go, I get it. I know that this was written to Jewish people, in 30 AD, right? What does this mean to me now? And I think that I always have that tendency to go, I want to make my faith about the things I'm going to follow, the rules I'm going to pay attention to, the systems I'm going to create so that I can be holy And at the expense of that, I'm going to ignore the fruit that I can bear. Or I'm going to ignore the people that I could help because I'm over here trying to be holy, but there are other people who need me to pay attention to them. So I think that as we've kind of gone on in 2020, there's been a lot of just crazy things that have happened. But I want to leave you with this, thinking about how we're going to act, how Flatirons Community Church and the church in general is going to act the rest of 2020. Remember, it's always easier to try to focus on what are the religious things that you can do, what are the things that you can do that you think will make you holy, than it is to say, who are the people who you can pay attention to and that you can be with and that you can walk alongside with that would be like the people that Jesus cared about. It's always easier to do this one. But I think that probably forever and the rest of 2020 for sure, Jesus is probably calling us to care about the people who are over here.